The laughter was so loud that no one heard the sound of a legend breaking. Photographers kept pressing their cameras, convinced they were capturing one of the happiest moments in entertainment history. Crew members leaned against the walls with wide smiles. Security guards relaxed their shoulders, and assistants whispered excitedly to one another. There stood two men who had conquered completely different worlds. One had ruled music. The other had ruled the ring. Elvis Presley and Muhammad Ali. To everyone watching, they looked invincible. But history has a strange habit. It hides its greatest turning points behind ordinary smiles. Because only moments after those cameras flashed, Muhammad Ali stepped close enough that only Elvis could hear him. He whispered 7 quiet words. No one else heard them. No microphone recorded them. No journalist ever wrote them down. Yet those 7 words erased the smile from Elvis Presley's face faster than anything the world had ever seen. Only a few minutes later, more than 20,000 people would watch Elvis walk onto the stage. They would cheer, they would scream, they would sing every lyric with him, but none of them knew they were looking at a man whose heart had just been shaken in a way fame could never repair. This is not the story the cameras captured. This is the story that lived between 2 photographs. The evening had begun like every other sold-out concert during the early 1970s. Outside the arena, thousands of devoted fans stretched around the building in lines that seemed to have no end. Young couples clutched handmade posters. Children sat on their fathers' shoulders, hoping for a single glimpse of the king. Mothers hummed Elvis songs while waiting for the doors to open. Every conversation carried the same excitement. What do you think he'll sing first? Will he wear the white jumpsuit? I heard this might be his greatest performance yet. Inside the arena, the energy was even more electric. Technicians crawled beneath the stage, checking every cable one final time. Musicians quietly tuned their instruments. Spotlights swept across the empty platform, preparing for the moment the curtain would rise. Every person backstage understood that an Elvis Presley concert was never just another show. It was an event people remembered for the rest of their lives. Hidden behind thick black curtains was Elvis's private dressing room. Unlike the chaos outside, it was surprisingly quiet. A long mirror framed by warm lights reflected a man the world believed had everything. His famous white eagle jumpsuit rested perfectly on his shoulders. Gold embroidery shimmered with every movement. Gemstones sparkled beneath the dressing room lights, like tiny stars trapped in fabric. His polished boots reflected the floor beneath him. Every detail had been prepared to perfection. From the outside, he looked exactly like a king. But mirrors never lie. As Elvis adjusted the collar of his suit, he caught his own reflection staring back at him. The smile on his face looked convincing. His eyes did not. He leaned closer to the mirror. For a brief moment, he barely recognized the man looking back. When had the excitement disappeared? When had every concert begun to feel heavier than the one before? He had spent years standing beneath the brightest lights on earth, yet somehow his own world had grown darker. Every city looked the same, every hotel room smelled the same. Every standing ovation faded before the next sunrise. The applause never stopped. Neither did the loneliness. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. His longtime stage manager opened the door just enough to peek inside. About 10 minutes. Elvis nodded without speaking. The manager smiled.
The crowd's louder than I've ever heard.
I know, Elvis answered quietly. They always are. The door closed again. Silence returned. Only the distant roar of thousands of fans echoed through the walls like waves crashing against stone. Then another voice shattered the quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen." "The king looks nervous." Elvis turned around. Standing in the doorway was Muhammad Ali. He entered the room with the effortless confidence that made strangers feel like old friends. His tailored suit fit perfectly, but it was his smile that filled the room before anything else. Every step carried the relaxed swagger of a man who feared absolutely nothing. Elvis laughed. "There he is. The only man alive who talks faster than I sing." Ali placed one hand over his chest with dramatic offense. "I don't talk too much. I simply give people more wisdom than they can handle." The room burst into laughter. Even the security guards couldn't help smiling. Several crew members quietly drifted closer, realizing they were witnessing something special. Two icons. One room. No cameras had been invited, yet photographers somehow found their way inside within seconds. Flash, flash, flash. Ali glanced at Elvis's sparkling jumpsuit and grinned. "I've fought world champions wearing less jewelry than that." More laughter. Elvis pointed toward Ali's perfectly polished shoes. "And I've never seen a boxer shine his shoes before throwing punches." Ali looked down. "These shoes have defeated undefeated men." "Oh, really?" Elvis replied. "They scare them before you even throw the first punch?" Ali snapped his fingers. "Exactly." The room erupted again. One photographer wiped tears from his eyes from laughing so hard. Someone jokingly tossed Ali a pair of oversized boxing gloves. Without hesitation, he slipped them on. He bounced lightly across the room.
"Come on, Elvis. Show me what you've learned watching my fights."
Elvis raised both fists dramatically. His stance was terrible, completely wrong. Ali burst into uncontrollable laughter. "No, no. Your feet are trying to leave each other. Even beginners stand better than that." Elvis laughed so hard he almost lost his balance. "You sing my songs. I'll fight your fights. Deal?" Ali circled him playfully. "You wouldn't survive one round." "I only need one guitar," Elvis answered. "I don't need 12 rounds." The photographers couldn't stop shooting. Every flash froze another second of genuine happiness. Neither legend was performing. Neither was pretending. For a few beautiful minutes, they were simply two men enjoying each other's company. Years later, those photographs would travel across the world. People would smile every time they saw them. But photographs never reveal what happened immediately afterward. Because something changed. Not loudly. Quietly.
Almost invisibly. Ali slowly removed the boxing gloves. He set them down on a nearby chair. The smile faded from his face. His eyes settled on Elvis. Not the performer. Not the superstar. The man. Elvis noticed the change instantly. "So," he said softly, "what is it?" Ali didn't answer right away. Outside, the arena shook as thousands of voices chanted one name. "Elvis! Elvis! Elvis!" Inside the dressing room, the silence became almost uncomfortable. Ali stepped closer. Close enough that no one else could hear. His voice dropped to little more than a whisper. His expression carried no trace of humor now, only honesty, only concern, only the quiet understanding that exists between two men who know what greatness truly costs. Elvis held his breath. Somehow, before Ali spoke a single word, he already knew this conversation was about to change something inside him forever.
Muhammad Ali held Elvis's gaze for several long seconds.
The noise outside seemed to disappear. The roaring crowd, the hurried footsteps, the distant sound of guitars being tuned. Everything faded until only two men remained inside that quiet dressing room. Ali spoke so softly that even the photographers standing only a few feet away couldn't hear a single word. Millions remember your applause. He paused, never looking away from Elvis's eyes. Your family remembers your heart. The words were simple. There was no poetry, no dramatic speech, yet they landed with the force of a heavyweight punch. Elvis didn't answer. His smile dissolved so naturally that nobody noticed the exact moment it disappeared. His breathing became slower. His fingers tightened around the jeweled belt resting against his waist. For a heartbeat, he wasn't standing inside a sold-out arena. He was somewhere else, back home, far away from the screaming crowds. He saw memories instead of walls.
His mother smiling at him before fame changed everything. Long drives through Memphis before cameras followed his every step. Late-night dinners where nobody asked for an autograph. Moments when he was simply Elvis. Not the king, not a legend, just a son, just a man. Ali quietly watched every emotion cross his friend's face. He had seen that expression before. Not in singers, not in actors, in champions. The look of someone who had climbed to the highest mountain only to realize no one was waiting there. Finally, Elvis spoke. His voice was almost a whisper. "Why would you say that to me?" Ali folded his arms and leaned lightly against the makeup table. "Because I know what people like us become." Elvis frowned. Ali continued. "When I was a young fighter, I believed winning would solve everything. I thought another title, another headline, another standing ovation would finally make life feel complete." A faint smile appeared.
It never did.
He slowly shook his head. The cheers grow louder, but the silence waiting for you afterward grows louder too. Elvis lowered his eyes. Every sentence felt painfully familiar. Ali wasn't talking about boxing anymore. He was talking about life. He stepped closer again. "You know what's strange?" Elvis looked up. "The world thinks we're surrounded by people." Ali glanced toward the hallway where dozens of assistants rushed past the open doorway. They see bodyguards. They see managers. They see reporters. They see fans. They think we're never alone. Another pause. "The truth. I've never felt lonelier than after winning my biggest fights." The room became completely still. One photographer quietly lowered his camera. Nobody wanted to interrupt. Nobody even knew why the atmosphere had suddenly changed. Ali looked directly into Elvis. "You've spent years giving your voice to the world. But tell me something. When was the last time you gave your time to the people who loved you before the world did?" The question struck deeper than any criticism Elvis had ever received, because there was no anger in it, only truth. His thoughts drifted back through the previous years, concert after concert, tour after tour, television appearances, film sets, award ceremonies. He remembered birthdays he had missed, family dinners canceled because another performance had been scheduled,
Phone calls shortened because another interview was waiting. Letters he had promised to answer. Promises he had intended to keep. He closed his eyes. How had it happened? How had success quietly stolen the ordinary life he once treasured? A knock echoed through the room. The stage manager stepped inside. 5 minutes. His cheerful smile disappeared as soon as he noticed the silence. He looked from Elvis to Ali, then back again. Everything all right? Elvis forced a small smile. Yeah. Just talking. The manager nodded uncertainly before closing the door. The silence returned. Ali placed a firm hand on Elvis's shoulder. His voice carried the calm confidence that had inspired countless fighters before championship bouts. Listen to me. There will always be another concert. There will always be another crowd. There will always be another standing ovation. He gently squeezed Elvis's shoulder. But there will never be another chance to love people after they're gone. Elvis felt something tightening inside his chest. Not fear, not sadness. Regret. The kind of regret that arrives quietly, long before anyone notices it. Outside, the audience erupted once more. Thousands of voices merged into one deafening chant. Elvis! 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 The walls themselves seemed to tremble. The stage manager returned, this time without knocking. It's time. Every musician was already in position. The curtain was about to rise. The spotlight was waiting. For a long moment, Elvis didn't move. He stared at the floor, then slowly lifted his head. His eyes were different now. The confidence was still there, but something deeper had replaced the effortless smile he had worn only minutes earlier. He looked at Muhammad Ali. I've walked onto hundreds of stages. He swallowed hard. But tonight, he let out a slow breath. It feels like I'm walking onto one for the very first time. Ali smiled again, not the playful smile from earlier. A quiet smile. One friend giving another the strength he needed. He nodded once. You don't have to sing perfectly tonight. He turned toward the door. You just have to sing honestly. Elvis watched him leave the dressing room. Then he looked one final time into the mirror. The man staring back still wore the same brilliant white jumpsuit, the same polished boots, the same famous hairstyle. But behind those familiar eyes, someone had changed. Outside, the announcer's voice thundered across the arena. Ladies and gentlemen, the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley! The curtain began to rise, and with every inch it climbed, Elvis understood that the performance waiting beyond those lights would become the most personal one of his entire life. The applause struck like a tidal wave. Before Elvis had even taken his first step onto the stage, more than 20,000 people were already on their feet. Their voices merged into one deafening roar that shook the walls of the arena. Elvis! 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 The curtains opened. A single white spotlight found him. For years, this had been the moment he loved more than any other. Tonight, it felt different. Every step toward the microphone felt heavier than the last. The glittering rhinestones on his famous white jumpsuit reflected thousands of tiny lights, yet for the first time in years, Elvis barely noticed them. His mind was still inside that dressing room, still hearing Muhammad Ali's calm voice, still feeling the weight of those 7 quiet words. The audience expected the usual entrance, the confident smile, the playful wave, the larger-than-life performer they had traveled hundreds of miles to see. Instead, Elvis stopped. He stood silently beneath the spotlight.
1 second passed. Then another. The musicians looked at one another. The conductor lowered his hands. Even the photographers near the stage slowly stopped taking pictures. The arena, which had been exploding with excitement only moments earlier, gradually fell into complete silence. Thousands of people watched without understanding. Something was different. They could feel it. Elvis slowly reached for the microphone. He looked across the sea of faces stretching into the darkness. Young couples, children sitting on their parents' shoulders, elderly fans holding programs close to their hearts, veterans, factory workers, students, families. For the first time in a very long time, he wasn't looking at an audience. He was looking at people, real people. People with parents, children, dreams, heartbreak. People who had chosen to spend one unforgettable evening with him. He took a slow breath, then spoke. There are nights when a performer walks onto a stage believing he has something to give. He paused. And there are nights when he discovers he has something to learn. The arena remained perfectly still. No cheers, no screams, only silence. I've spent years hearing your applause. His voice trembled slightly. I thought applause was the greatest sound a person could hear. He lowered his eyes for a moment. But tonight, I remembered there are voices far more important. Some fans exchanged confused glances. Others simply listened. Elvis smiled gently. Not the practiced smile seen on magazine covers, a real one. The people who loved us before the lights. The people who waited for us before the fame. The people who never asked us to become legends. He looked toward the darkness beyond the first rows. I hope none of us waits too long before telling those people how much they matter. Several audience members quietly wiped tears from their eyes. No one knew what had happened backstage. No one knew about the conversation with Muhammad Ali. Yet somehow, everyone understood the feeling. Elvis nodded to the band. The first gentle notes of the evening floated through the arena. When he began to sing, something had changed. The voice was still unmistakably Elvis, powerful, warm, effortless. But beneath every note lived an honesty that even his closest musicians had never heard before. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't trying to become larger than life. He was simply telling the truth through music. One song became another, then another. The audience stopped treating the concert like a spectacle. It became something deeply personal. Some couples quietly held hands. A father lifted his young daughter into his arms. A gray-haired woman closed her eyes and smiled through tears. Even members of the crew standing backstage found themselves listening instead of working. Near the wings of the stage, Muhammad Ali watched in complete silence. He folded his arms and smiled. Not because Elvis sounded different, because he could see the difference. The performer had stepped aside. The man had finally appeared. When the final song ended, the arena erupted into the loudest standing ovation of the night. It seemed endless. People refused to leave.
They continued clapping long after the music had faded. Elvis stood quietly, taking it all in. Then he bowed, not with the confidence of a king, but with the humility of a grateful man. As he walked off stage, the backstage hallway felt strangely peaceful. The same walls, the same lights, the same people, yet everything seemed different. Muhammad Ali was waiting near the dressing room door. Neither man spoke. Words were no longer necessary. Elvis walked over. For a brief moment, they simply looked at one another. Then Elvis extended his hand. Ali ignored it. Instead, he pulled Elvis into a firm embrace.
It lasted only a few seconds. But sometimes, a few seconds are enough to carry the weight of an entire lifetime. When they finally stepped apart, Elvis smiled. This may have been the most important conversation I've had in years.
Ali chuckled softly. No. He shook his head. The important conversation is the one you'll have with the people waiting for you after tonight. Elvis nodded slowly. I understand now. Ali placed a hand on his shoulder one last time. I knew you would. The hallway slowly emptied. Crew members packed equipment. Musicians stored their instruments. The lights inside the arena grew dim. Another concert had ended. Another city would soon be waiting. Another audience would eventually cheer. But some nights refuse to become ordinary memories. Years passed. The famous photographs from that evening appeared in books, documentaries, magazines, and exhibitions around the world. Millions smiled when they saw Elvis Presley and Muhammad Ali laughing together.
To most people, it was simply a picture of two legends enjoying a joke. But photographs capture expressions. They rarely capture the moments that change a life. No camera recorded the whisper. No microphone preserved the silence that followed. No headline described the invisible battle that took place inside one man's heart before he stepped beneath the spotlight. And perhaps that is why the moment became so powerful. Because the greatest conversations are often the ones the world never hears. Legends are remembered for their victories, for their records, for their fame. But the moments that truly shape them almost always happen when the cameras are looking somewhere else. Sometimes history is not changed by a championship fight. Sometimes it is not changed by a #1 song. Sometimes history changes because one friend finds the courage to tell another friend exactly what he needs to hear. And somewhere beyond the applause, beyond the flashing cameras, beyond the roaring crowds, that quiet conversation between two extraordinary men continued to echo long after the arena had fallen silent.